Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I am the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. And I am your moderator today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding anxiety and how to use it to our advantage. Despite the formal end of the pandemic emergency, Americans still experience high levels of anxiety. Between 25 to 32% of adults in 2023 report symptoms that meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder. As Mental Health Awareness Month winds down and the need to find effective ways to cope with and manage anxiety is critical. Today, we have Dr. Sherry Kelly on for an hour to talk about how to foster greater emotional resilience in the face of anxiety. In addition to discussing why we still have anxiety, Sherry will help us learn what to do about it. Focusing on a mind-body approach to anxiety, she will share strategies to help us take control of anxiety rather than letting anxiety control us. A little bit about our presenter today. She is a dear friend of the Positive Psychology Hour, a presenter here very often, not only for the JCC, but for WBI. She is a PhD and a clinical psychologist and clinical neuropsychologist with practices in New York and Connecticut. She has more than 25 years of experience as a therapist and is also a certified positive psychology coach. She serves as the chair of the Parenting and Education Group for the Mental Wellness Society International, and she's the co-chair of the Connecticut Psychological Association's Child and Family Committee, as well as the co-founder with her daughter of Positivity Teens. Welcome to the call, Sherry. I am so glad you are here and with us.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Happy summer. I guess it's now officially the start of summer. So it's wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Sherry, why did you want to present on this topic? You see the stats are just rampant, right?
Yeah. So, the statistics that are out from the CDC and the NIMH are showing that even still now, after the pandemic, adults are really experiencing significant levels of anxiety. Some statistics show that 33% of adults even today still are experiencing anxiety currently. During the pandemic, it was even higher. Our world has very much changed in the past 2 years. It almost seems as though the future is coming at us faster. We're living in a world that is highly volatile, highly unpredictable, full of conflict, full of ambiguity, in a world that is hyper-connected with digital technology. So many of us are isolated because we're still working virtually. The anxiety, I call it the anxiety epidemic, is particularly hitting hard the younger generation, the 20-somethings. They seem to be getting really a big share of the anxiety. Of course, that makes sense, right? Because the pandemic occurred at a time that's already anxiety provoking for young people, right? They were graduating college, they were trying to get their first big jobs, trying to start their career, trying to launch themselves as adults. And then that was really taken away from them through the pandemic. And now they're in their 20s, but they lost time developing socially, emotionally, intellectually during their 20s. They don't have the structure in place like the younger people do who were in school. They may not have families like the older or the 30 or 40 somethings have. They don't have the same level of structured support or ways to meet people. So it makes sense, right, that in many ways we are still dealing with high levels of anxiety.
Well, great. What I love about working with you and hearing from you is you also have approaches to mitigate that we can do that are mind-body approaches. And of course, our bodies are with us when 100% of the time. So I love them. They're strategies that are easily applicable. So why don't we get started?
I hope so. Yes. So I love it. I love doing approaches that are easy, like you said, to apply to the real world and everyday living. Okay. There's going to be time. I'm going to start now and then I'm going to break for some questions. Okay. So I'm just going to share. I'm going to go to screen share. And are you seeing this yet, Caroline, or not?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, it's coming. Oops. So hold on. Sorry about that. So.
Okay.
I'm just going to go to screen share. Let's
Yeah.
see. All right. Okay. And let's see. I'm just having some technical problems here with my wonderful, there it is.
Are you
There
on
we
your
go. Now
iPad?
I just need to go screen share, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And for some reason, I'm not finding it. Let's
Okay.
just, there's the button.
There we go.
Thanks you guys for putting up with me this morning because it was just,
We don't see it yet.
okay, it's going to happen. Hold on a
If
second.
it doesn't, I have your screen, your slideshow, so I can show it.
Okay, that's good. It should happen. So I'm just right now, my computer got stuck. All right. I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm going to open it up again. Okay. And
Go ahead and get it.
give me 1 second and we're going to have it happen. Okay. Do you guys see the screen share now?
Not yet.
Okay. It worked perfectly before I got on, right?
I know. Okay. We did practice this, everybody. Not to
Here
worry.
it comes. Here it comes. There it is. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now I can do it. And we're going to go to the
You
big
just wanted
video.
to what place? There you go. All right.
All
You're
right,
all set.
guys. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to start with the key takeaways today, right away. All right. That way, if you have to leave early, you have them. So we're going to talk about anxiety's purpose. Right. And once you understand the purpose of anxiety, you can harness power of anxiety. There's a reason why we have it. It's a bioevolutionary survival mechanism, and it can really serve us in many ways. It's like a wise friend. If you start thinking about anxiety in that way, it's going to be a life changer. Anxiety acts as an alarm system. I'm going to explain a little bit more about that, but it's really alerting us to things and asking those key questions about what this anxiety is alerting us to, what's it trying to tell us, what we can understand about our emotions through anxiety. It's going to change the way that we actually think about ourselves, think about the world we're interacting with, and how we want to act. We can actually make anxiety work for us. I'm going to give you some tips for that today. And I'm also going to tell you why you have more power than you realize over anxiety. Yes, you do. We're also going to talk about how positive psychology and cognitive shifts can be utilized to energize yourself instead of making yourself feel anxious or deplete your energy. So the number one thing I want you to understand is that you have more power than you realize over your thoughts. You have choices in how you want to think. And you've got to train your mind to be stronger than your emotions, or you're going to lose out to anxiety every time and lose yourself. So anxiety is there for a purpose, right? Anxiety, this is my opinion as a psychologist and a neuropsychologist. So some people, may not understand this concept, but this is the way I, in a very simple way, want to share it with you. Anxiety is a type of bioevolutionary survival mechanism. Okay, this is the saber-toothed tiger. He comes in many forms now. Okay, in your life. All right. Anxiety helps us to survive. because it activates us. It's there to activate us, okay? It's there to tell us about danger, okay? We use anxiety also to help recognize what is triggering our emotions, okay? It's like that voice in our head, all right, that tells us something's not right, that there could be a threat, it could be a fear, it could be something that makes us feel vulnerable. So when you feel anxious, I want you to think about this picture. Yeah, anxiety is trying to tell us that there's danger ahead. Could be little dangers, big dangers. It's bringing on emotions. In my world, we do not judge emotions, and I'd like you to stop also judging your emotions. Don't judge yourself when you feel anxious. It's that anxiety is there to help you, okay? Tune into that voice in your head. Ask yourself, hey, is that true? Is what I'm fearing really true? Okay. And, you know, my colleague, Gerard Meyer, and I were on a maybe last month, or maybe it was in March, right, Caroline? And one of the things we talked about is these false impressions we give ourselves. So, you know, you can be anxious about certain situations with some, you know, assurance that, yeah, that's a valid fear. But what if I'm afraid of, you know, of an alligator that's in a fountain? Are there alligators in a fountain? No. Are there alligators in a fishbowl? No. So sometimes we make out the threat to be in a situation that's not even realistic. Okay. What's important is, why am I thinking of that threat? What's that's trying to tell me? What is it alerting you to? So this is for Caroline. So as you know, the brain is shaped by your experiences, okay? It's kind of like a little bonsai tree, and it's shaped and it's pruned by your genetics, by physiology, but also by all the experiences you've had in life. So because we have a choice about what experiences we want to use to shape our brain, we also have the responsibility to choose the experiences that will shape the brain towards the wise and the wholesome. And that's by Dr. Richard Davidson. And I just love that, right? So when you look at this very simple picture of the brain, okay, you see, we evolved from this very low and back part of the brain upwards, okay? This part down in the middle, okay, you see where the brainstem is? That's our survival state. And then we go into the emotional state, right? This back part of the brain does a lot of the work of, hey, what are we seeing? What are we going to move? What are our movements? Our balance is, you know, combination down here. We also see the movie of our lives back in here, okay? But this is our executive functioning area, and this is what we think about when you hear like the prefrontal lobes, okay, the frontal lobes. This is what we do in terms of planning and initiating and responding to the real world. And that's why it's called executive functioning, okay? So, but anxiety is coming from this very old part of the brain that helps us survive. So anxiety is like having your own personal alarm system, okay? Our brains act like pattern recognition machines, okay? They see patterns from the experiences we've had in our lives. So, you know, if we've been burned a couple of times, we know the red flags for that. If you guys remember the 60s show, Lost in Space, right? That the robot used to always yell out, "Danger, Will Robinson." We still have that in our brain. It's telling us that there's danger ahead. It's alerting us to something. That anxiety is like a very sophisticated alarm system. When you feel that go off, ask yourself, What is this emotion trying to tell me? Not why do I feel upset, not why am I feeling anxious, but go for the what. What is this trying to tell me? What are some threats that I'm feeling or sensing? We're going to move into the what, not why. Okay, what are some things I need to be on the lookout? What are some patterns I recognize here? Okay, this way we can move into what we're going to do about it, and we're not going to let anxiety rob us. Okay, so I just gave you a lot. Any questions so far, Caroline?
We have one. Would you please define anxiety and how it changed since the pandemic? Which I think you have.
That's a great question. Do you want to go there, you guys? All right. So here's something really quick. Before the COVID pandemic happened, we had a greater sense of internal locus of control. During the pandemic, our locus of control shifted from internal to largely external locus of control. So let me put that in easier to understand terms. Before the pandemic, we had a lot of control over our lives, simple things, little things, and big things. How we breathe, how we stood in line to get our cup of coffee, how we used the elevator, how we socialized, how we learned, how we went to work, how we played, how we traveled, etc. Right? During the pandemic, we had our world shifted into an external locus of control, largely, where we were told how to breathe. You have to have a mask on. We have to stand 6 feet away. To be afraid of each other, we could be contagious. If you breathed on me, I could get sick, I could die. Oh my gosh, better cross the street. We were given many external cues to be on guard for our lives. Okay, we were told you can't go to work. It's not safe. Okay, our world became in many ways smaller because we had to work from home to survive. Our survival mechanisms kicked in. And so our ability to move, to take action when we felt stressed, unfortunately was limited by many of the restrictions that were put in place to keep us safe. Okay, so we had this big shift, and this big shift for many people, it felt like, well, I had a lot of my self-control or control over my life taken from me. Okay, and along with that, we had many of our expectations snatched from us, especially for our kids. Okay, expectations were shifted about, hey, what I can do in school, what I can do in work. Many of our life passages were restricted, right? We had to delay weddings, we had to delay reunions, we had to delay meetings, getting together, trips. Okay, so our world shifted from one where we had a lot of self-determination to one where that was diminished. Does that make sense? All right, awesome. That's a whole other topic. All right, so anxiety and panic. So, people will often ask, hey, what happens when I feel panicky? And I love this. This is, from Journey to Wellness, and they have such great cartoons. But do you see this? Anxiety is often an overestimation of the threat. And we do that because we're hypervigilant. We have finely tuned alarm systems from our experiences, also from our genetics. So we combine that with an underestimation of our ability to cope with it and to handle the consequences, okay? So I love this balance, right? You balance the threat with the reality and your ability to cope. I'm going to share with you some tips today for how to cope better so that you do not have to feel like you're underestimating the power that you have to cope with these situations. So one of the most common diagnoses that psychologists and psychiatrists are giving now since the pandemic is generalized anxiety disorder. And you might be anticipating the next question, Sherry, what's the difference between anxiety and stress? Isn't just anxiety the same thing as stress? Well, no, it's not. Stress is a more immediate response to an external situation. I have job stress. I'm stressed by the traffic I had to go through today. Okay. Anxiety is more persistent. It's more excessive. It's more flowing out of something that is coming from within us, fears that we are processing internally. It's less of a immediate external threat. Okay. And these are the big symptoms of anxiety. It's not just wringing your hands or outwardly looking anxious. People with an anxiety disorder can have a whole constellation of symptoms, including feeling on edge, excessive worry most days, irritability, difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, feeling tense, chronic fatigue, feeling like, they're overwhelmed. So there's this whole group of symptoms that come together. It's not just a stress response. I wanted just to deal with that up front. So how do we stop our default mode for anxiety, right? Oftentimes in our wonderful WBI webinars, we've talked about the negativity bias. Rick Hansen says, our brains act like Velcro for the negative and Teflon for positive experiences. We do. We have a negativity bias, and that's also a survival mechanism. And that negativity bias can make us, guess what? Anxious. All right. So I love this quote that living with anxiety is like being followed by a voice. It knows all your insecurities and uses them against you. It gets to the point when it's the loudest voice in the room, the only one you can hear. So let's stop it. Here's how we're going to do it. I want you to stop attaching self-limiting stories to yourself. Stop the negative self-talk. Stop underestimating the power you have to cope. Stop letting other people determine how well you can cope with life's uncertainties. Believe in yourself. Stop being inflexible. That's the growth mindset we seek, right? Stop being a fixed mindset person and becoming more flexible, more agile in life. Okay, if it didn't work out, that doesn't mean it's not going to work out next time. You have to work against that pattern recognition system I spoke of a couple slides ago in your brain. Yes, you have pattern recognition. That's there for a reason, to keep you safe. But you know what? You can check the reality. Is that really true? Just because I didn't get this one client I wanted, did that mean that I'm not good at sales? Or just because I know I didn't get that raise at work, does that mean I'm not ever going to get promoted? Well, that's, pretty negative self-determination. Stop being avoidant when you feel anxious. That does not solve anxiety. And a lot of us do that. And we do really creative things to be avoidant. Okay. If you think about ways we're avoidant, let's scroll on the phone, right? Let's avoid it by, I'll just go shopping. I'll just sweep it under the rug in my brain and I'll deal with it later. I don't want to do anything head on. I don't like the conflict that I'm feeling or the conflict I'm going to have with someone else. So I'm just going to avoid the situation. That doesn't really get rid of the anxiety. Stop judging yourself. Stop judging your emotions. No, that's a really hard one, right? Especially since that role has been placed on us perhaps by parents. Maybe we've been self-judging our whole life. But that's fueling your anxiety. Stop trying to distract yourself out of anxiety. One of the most common ways that people distract themselves is actually online, by gaming, by scrolling, by going on social media platforms. And that actually doesn't serve to make anxiety lessen. It makes it actually worse. It makes you more reactive, in my opinion, when you're gaming and when you're engaged in social media. Go with what your experience in coping tells you, okay? Think about the times when you've had the strength to overcome disappointments before, or you've had the strength to overcome challenges before. Take advantage of that part of you that is strong and recognize what your goals and values are. Well, what's my destination here? What's really important to me? Where do I really want to go? Am I going to let the anxiety keep me from getting what I want in life, keeping me from getting that job, keeping me from going out with that person because I might have social anxiety? So these are the key strategies I want you to use on yourself. So here are some power cognitions, power thoughts for anxiety. And as my friend Gerard Meyer says, if we can change the way you think, it's going to change the way you feel, and it's going to change the way you act, right? So if I'm anxious, right, it's not going to make it less tough. If I'm anxious, it's not going to make the situation less difficult, will it? Think about that. How is anxiety serving you? How is anxiety serving you? Right? How is anxiety serving you? It's probably doing you a disservice. So we want to accept it. We accept the anxiety. It's a reality. It's something that we do in life. It's not a disorder. Anxiety is something that we live with. It helps push us. That discomfort of anxiety is the very thing that's going to make you grow. So accept it and do something about it. We want to take action over procrastination. We don't want to use avoidance. We don't want to use distraction. We want to take action over emotion. Okay. And we want to stop the what ifs. Okay. What if the guy doesn't like me? What if the girl doesn't like me? What if I don't get the job? What if I drop something and I embarrass myself at the party? What if I look like I don't know what I'm talking about? What are some of the what ifs that you always tell yourself that actually make anxiety worse? Okay. So I'm going to stop right now because I just gave you a load to think about. And I bet we have some questions.
Yeah, we do. We have some comments in the chat. Robin says, thank you. These are great tools. And she says, when she takes a break from tech after 2 days of downtime, I feel more in control and less in fight or flight mode.
Right.
And then Helene wants to know, sometimes if someone doesn't like being social, and it just makes them uncomfortable, why is that person often pushed into those kind of situations? Not sure what she means by that, but I guess there are some social situations that we have to go through, right? And that those can make us anxious.
Yes. And well, there are people who have neurodiversity, and their neurodiversity makes it very uncomfortable for them to be in certain situations, some of them social situations. And understanding what those triggers are and how to manage those feelings will help you cope with them. That's one reason. And yeah, oftentimes it goes back to that cartoon where we're in the social situation and we think the threat is much greater than our ability to cope with it. And sometimes we feel anxious and we get into situations where we soon learn, oh my gosh, my expectations are so different than what the reality is. And that fuels the anxiety.
Yeah. I was thinking, also, Sophie had a great point. She says, from what if to what is.
That's great, Sophie. Absolutely. And what can be.
Right.
And the three most powerful words, what comes next?
I'm writing that one down.
All right. Yeah. Do you want to stay in your anxiety cauldron or do you want to move? What comes next? All right. Okay. Wait, was there another question, Caroline? Because we had 7 up there.
How can medication help control anxiety? And would you be able to provide another example of how to use action to beat certain emotions?
Yes. All right. Well, I'm not a medical doctor and I can't answer the question about medications, but what from a neuropsych point of view, I will just tell you, um, we have different or unique neurochemistry. And some people's neurochemistry is going really, really fast. Others is going really, really slow. And they're a little bit off balance in how their brain is or how their brain's chemicals are working together and how we process stimuli
Oh,
that comes in. All right.
also, quick
Yeah.
question. I read it wrong. It's meditation, not
Oh,
medication.
I'm sorry.
No, that was my fault.
Well, that's
Thank you,
good.
everyone in
So
the
there
chat
is,
that
yeah.
helped me with that.
So there you got the medication. So the medication works on the chemistry. Okay. All the research that's out there, I will say this, there's many studies and you look under meta-analyses of best approaches for anxiety. And the research that's been done for decades shows that it's really a 2-pronged approach, medication and therapy. Okay, it's not just medication. Okay, it's really changing the way that you think about things, changing your cognitions that can really help you with anxiety. It's not just taking a pill and you're cured. If you still have the same thought processes, it's going to get you in the same corner. So with meditation, yes, meditation and yoga, wonderful for anxiety. And I know that we've done many webinars on that.
Yeah. And
Wow.
Rachel asked, any additional suggestions for people with ADHD for whom emotional hijacking and anxiety happens more easily than for neurotypicals? And when you mention action over procrastination, avoidance, distraction, all of that is easier for neurotypicals too.
Yes. And you know what? This is true. And so I love working with neurodiverse populations. I've been working with neurodiverse populations for 30 years. And I started a holistic program 30 years ago in New York with colleagues from the professions of nutrition, physical therapy, and occupational therapy. And we've put together actual programs for clients that are a combination of different approaches for handling anxiety if you're neurodiverse. Okay, so you can contact me, email me, and I can give you more information on that.
And then did you have the other example?
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Yes, get ready for the good stuff. We'll get more examples. Okay, so guys, listen. You are, my friends, in charge of 3 things in your life you're in control of. And there is a great author, psychologist, Jonathan Fader. He's a sports psychologist, and he shares this a lot. So there are 3 things you're in control of. Okay. And the reason why it's a gorilla, I couldn't find one of an ape, but it spells ape. You're actually in control of 3 things: your attitude, your preparation, and your effort. Think about that. Anxiety stems a lot from when we feel we don't have control. So when you're anxious, I want you to think about this. What are you really in control of? 3 things: attitude, preparation, and effort. And guess what? They're all intertwined, right? You need a good attitude to prepare, to put forth effort, right? It takes effort to prepare, to put forth the right attitude, and preparation to have that good attitude and effort, to prepare for situations in advance. I'm going to get into that more, but those are the three things. And you when it comes down to thinking about what you're really in control of, it's under these three categories. It's really simple. So, things that can make anxiety worse. Spending time on social media. Why? Someone brought that up, Caroline. I'm trying to think who that was, but I'm going to explain why. I've done a couple of webinars with Caroline talking about how social media actually changes the way our brains respond to stimuli. And I've been talking about this for 20 years. It started with gaming 20 years ago when the first version of Halo came out. I've been writing about this. I know my colleagues have now gotten on the bandwagon, and I have been warning about this for a while. I will tell you that the way that social media and gaming is set up, it's to make us more reactive instead of proactive. And it's training us to be, in some ways, hypervigilant, depending on the game you're playing. And for kids who have developing brains, it has a bigger impact. The material that we see in social media can make us anxious, right? I'm missing out. I don't have as many likes. I don't look like that. That's what my life isn't. I should be doing something else. What's wrong with me? This is really true for younger people. Trying to distract yourself with procrastinating tactics makes it worse. Caffeine makes it worse. Sugar, oh, that's a tough one, right? But when you think about, oh, how often do we just anxiously eat, right? And we grab a cookie, we grab candy. Alcohol use. A lot of people use alcohol for self-medication, but the end game is it actually can make you depressed and anxious. People pleasing and saying yes all the time can make us anxious, right? Not getting enough exercise, not getting any exercise. There is an abundance of research showing the link between exercise and diminished anxiety, or exercise and better mental health. Hiding and isolating yourself can make anxiety worse. Not getting enough sleep, staying up all night to help, deal with anxiety by watching movies, watching TV, going on social media, gaming, that works against you. Poor eating habits and self-blame can make anxiety worse. So getting back to our strategies of what we can control and what I can't, realize what it is you can control, okay? So think of the APE, attitude, preparation, and effort, but then also think about this puzzle. What is really out of your control? And a lot of the things we worry about, a lot of things we feel anxious about, it's out of our control. So, ask yourself, which one of these things am I wasting time on, worrying about, instead of taking advantage and utilizing the things that are actually in your control? That is one of the most important strategies I will share with you, knowing the difference. So Wendy Suzuki, who's been a guest, Caroline, a couple of times with you?
Yeah, she has. She's been, she was with you for
great.
our the Dana Foundation for our Brain Health Awareness Week. And she presented on anxiety as well.
She's great. And this is a podcast, Anxiety is Your Superpower. She also has a book called The Gift of Anxiety. Okay. And I highly suggest it. Wendy, I mean, props to you. You're amazing. One of the things that comes out in Wendy's book, and I want to just share this with you, don't wait to see how you're going to react. And this is where I have my strategy called PAR, which is prepare, accommodate, and reframe. Don't wait to see how you're going to react. Prepare in advance how you want to respond to a stressful situation. Imagine the meeting that you're going to feel anxious about. What might happen? Okay, we go like our guest just said, we move from the what ifs to the what is, or what can we do about it? Okay, how do I want to respond in a way that I feel strong, respected, empowered? You can prepare in advance. Have an arsenal of learned responses. You practice them. Keep in mind what your destination and goal is. All right, what do I want to get out of this meeting? What's my goal? Maybe my goal is, hey, I want to present myself in a certain way in the meeting. Or maybe my goal is, I want to make this connection and meet this person I've been set up with, but I'm anxious. Or maybe I'm anxious to get that medical test done, and I've been putting it off. Well, what's your goal? My goal is to find out the results of the medical test, or to know if there's really something wrong. Okay, that's your goal. Imagine your goal. What choice are you going to make that's going to get you one step closer to the goal? Is it the choice of, I'm just going to put it off, I'll do it next year, I'll do it in 3 months, I'll do it in the fall, I don't want it to ruin my summer? Is that getting you closer to the goal of finding out if there's, God forbid, something wrong with you? Or if you say, you know what, my goal is to find out what's really going on, I need medical tests, my choice is I'm going to make that appointment, get the test so I can reach the goal of really finding out what's wrong with me. So you want to respond to anxiety, right, in a way that will get you closer to where you want to be, what your destination is, what your goal is. All right. And this is important stuff. So I'm just going to stop here. Carolyn, does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. And we have some questions in the chat as well. My anxiety is fueled by regrets, past decisions, and choices. And then a comment from Donna: doctors are prescribing medications like Ativan for anxiety and sleeping problems. They don't limit a drug like this to short-term use. Ativan is a benzo, which is very addictive and hard to stop using. I have read that its side effects can be harmful if used long-term, especially with older populations. And then finally, if someone is a lifelong complainer, how do you get them to change their attitude?
Okay, so those are 3 really important questions. Let's go to the first question first. Okay, that you asked me.
Okay, which is anxiety. My anxiety is fueled by regrets, past decisions, and choices. Any thoughts about that?
Okay, choices. That's right. So your life is based on choices. All right. Are you going to spend the rest of your life looking backwards, or do you want to choose to be in the here and now and move forward? That's a choice also. You have a choice of whether or not you want to focus on the problems, focus on what you regret, or focus on what you've learned from those choices, focus on the positive connections you've made with other people, focus on your strengths, and make choices that are more positive and that will get you to your goals in life, your dream, your best life scenario. All right, you have the rest of your life. So I'm oversimplifying, yes, and easier said than done. But why are you selling yourself so short? You deserve better. Okay, that's it.
And
What's
that really is a great example of growth mindset, right?
absolutely.
To look for the gold, to look for the growth, to say, wait a second, this happened to me, because we certainly can't control life is going to happen to us. But to say, wait a second, what can I benefit from this? What have I learned? I hear, we just had Maria Sawa, we had cancer spa day. And she said, well, I would never wish cancer on anyone. And certainly when my younger brother passed away, it was painful, but it reminded me the gift of that. And she said, I'm looking for the gift, was that he was a very yes oriented person. And I thought to myself, you know what? I can take some of that on. I can become
Yes.
more yes oriented. So that was something that situation gave her. And I think that's what you're trying to say, Sherry, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that was so nice of Maria to share that very personal story and her insights, because she has so many wonderful insights. I love her. I wanted to share with you something I've told you before, Caroline. One of the things that makes us anxious is that we have not determined our goals. We haven't determined our destination. Okay. And if you don't know what your goal is or what your destination is, you don't know where you're going. You don't know how to make right choices. You're living life by accident instead of purpose fully. So you want to live your life on purpose, not by accident. You have to have goals and you have to know what your destination is. Because otherwise, any little thing that might come along and rattle you is going to throw you off course in a big way. Instead of, if you know, hey, this is my destination, this is what I want, I'm going to realize that I'm going to make choices that will get me one step closer each way to what I want. Okay, let's do an example of that. What if, you know what, my goal is, I'll just take a goal of, my goal is to go back to school and get a degree, or get that degree I've always dreamt of getting. Okay, that's my goal. At least you have a goal. A lot of people that I see in my practice who are anxious or depressed, they don't know where they want to be in 5 years. They don't know what they want out of life by the time they reach a milestone age. And that in itself, not knowing, is relinquishing power from your life. Well, I'll see what happens. Well, seeing what happens is what makes you anxious. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes. And we have lots of
God, lots of
things.
comments. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Do you have more for your PowerPoint?
Yes, I do.
You want to run through that and then we'll.
So, how do we do this, guys? How do we harness the power of anxiety? Recognize the gift of productivity that comes from being anxious. Yes, that anxiety is telling you to take action. All right. It's telling you got to do something. Not doing something is what keeps you stuck in anxiety. Okay. The what if list that comes with your anxiety should be, all right, what am I going to do instead of the what if? What I want instead of what if? What is instead of what if? Okay. Turn the what if into positive action. Okay. What if I, am not liked by the person I meet on the blind date? Okay, fine. What am I going to do then? What will my action be? Okay. How do I want to handle it? Okay. Well, wow. Now I know what I don't like. I have now made it even easier to move towards my goal of finding someone, because now I know I've now discovered what I don't want. Okay, fine. That's one way of looking at it. Turn that what if list into a to-do list. All right. What do I have to do so that I can prepare and accommodate for the things I'm afraid of? Can I prepare my responses in advance? How do I want to respond to that family member that I always argue with, that I'm going to see at the barbecue next month? How do I want to respond to that annoying guy at work the next time he brings up a subject I don't like? So turn it into, okay, we're moved from a what if to what I'm going to do about it. Tune into the world around you. Don't seek distractions. Know that the only way out of anxiety is through it, working through it, going through it. Anxiety is going to activate us to do something, to take action. All right. It's called behavioral activation in cognitive behavior therapy, right? Taking action is one of the best medicines you can give yourself when you're feeling anxious. Okay. Instead of procrastinating, putting it off, or hiding from it. Shift your mindset. Here again, this is from Journey to Wellness. Okay. All right. So how do we shift our mindset, right? We're going to shift it from something negative, okay, into, well, I'm going to face my fears. What can I do about it? Okay, I trust myself. This is going to be a growing experience, knowing what I'm really in control of, my attitude, my preparation, my effort. Okay, let's stick with the preparation. I can prepare for this. This is how I want to respond. This is what I will do if I feel overwhelmed. This is what I can do to make myself feel stronger. Okay, developing confidence and trust in yourself. Okay, here's our target points of the strategy. And this comes from Mindful Choice Cognitive Interventions. It grew out of positive psychology. It was developed by my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Gerard Meyer and Dr. Robert Leibovitz. Remember, adversity is not an invitation to helplessness. That's powerful, okay? Know what your emotions are alerting you to. Realizing that that anxiety is an alarm system, and ask yourself, okay, what's this trying to tell me? Is it a threat that I feel? Is it telling me that I'm not prepared? Is it the anxiety telling me that I might not know how to handle a situation? Is it telling me that I don't feel in control? That takes practice to develop that mind shift to start thinking that way. But once you do, you're going to feel less anxious. Remember that you end up where you look. So if you're looking for negativity, if you're looking for disaster, if you're looking for a fail, you're going to end up there. Instead, look for the win. Look for getting closer to your goal. And don't get stuck asking the why, right? Don't ask, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I so insecure? Why do I lack confidence? Why am I afraid? What can I do about it? What might I be able to do that will make me feel better right now? What might I be able to learn? What knowledge gaps do I have that I need to fill in? And how can I get closer to the goal I want? Or how can I feel better? What can I do in a positive way? How can I turn this from a negative to a positive? And then identify the choices and options you have, right? Look for choices, look for alternatives. If you don't see a choice, you don't have a chance, right? So there might be another solution out there. Look for the solution, don't focus on the problem. Make choices if you don't see one. Okay, I'll create another way of doing something. I'll create a different way of solving a problem. Okay, I'm anxious about this meeting I'm going to have, but I'm going to think of a couple of ways I can approach the meeting. So if it's not going well, I can shift. That's just one example. Okay. And then lastly, this is, I always end my talks, Caroline, find a pebble of positivity in every situation, and a mountain of possibilities will be on your horizon. Thank you so much.
Amazing, amazing. I'll leave this up for a moment and we can then take some questions, which one is this: would you kindly review PAR with an example?
Sure. Prepare, accommodate, and reframe. Okay. Think of a golf, you're shooting par. Okay. I'll give this an example. Let's say, Caroline, I have to go to this meeting at the JCC, and I'm really anxious about going to a meeting and meeting strange people. And I'm really, really anxious about even, preparing for the meeting, but I have to prepare. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to prepare what the objectives are for the meeting. I am going to take my notes. I am going to also prepare by filling in the knowledge gaps. Maybe I'm anxious because I have too many gaps in the knowledge. Maybe I need to know who's going to be at the meeting. Maybe I need to know what their role is. Maybe I need to know what their motivation is for being at the meeting. Maybe I need to know what the mandates are of the guys, the stakeholders at the meeting, or the girls or the women in the meeting. All right. Maybe I need to prepare 2 ways of presenting my ideas. So if one way isn't going over that well, I can shift and say, hey, let me put it another way. Or maybe I can stop and say, hey, you know what? I want to hear from you. Now that I've given you a couple of my ideas, let me shift, and I'm going to let you tell me more about what you want to do. So that is preparation. The A, accommodating, is, hey, I'm going to shift. I'm going to accommodate for the change in mood, or maybe my idea went over as a lead balloon. I'm accommodating. That's the A. And then R, after the meeting's over, I'm going to reframe it. Hey, that wasn't so bad. I prepared, I accommodated, I learned a lot, I overcame my fear. All right. And I expressed my idea. And you know what? It got me one step closer to my goal of making new connections, building my network, getting my ideas out there, letting them know what I do. That's one example.
Amazing. Barbara said something interesting. Isn't exercise a form of distraction, like meditation, and also forms of procrastination? And isn't it often helpful to be distracted rather than obsessive and or procrastinate? Why think of something today that won't happen for weeks or months? For example, medical or scholastic tests.
Okay.
So if I have something way off in the distance, and I'm anxious about it, like a medical test or anything. So this is can you tease this out a little bit? The difference between like obsessiveness and procrastination, right?
Well, they're totally different. I mean, there's totally different. And obsessing grows out of anxiety. It's a part of anxiety. Some people have an obsessive disorder, right? And oftentimes the way that that's teased out is by doing something. So you're obsessing about the thought, the what ifs, or the thought of it, or the things that could happen, or how it's going to make you feel, instead of going, okay, what can I do about it? What do you want to do about it? How is the obsessing serving you? Ask yourself that. If you have a medical test off in the distance, ask yourself, well, what can I do now to improve my health? What can I do now that might be good for me? Maybe I need to move up my test. Will that help to move up the test? What knowledge do I seek about the test or a disorder that might make me feel better? So it's taking action. Meditation and exercise is not a distraction. It's actually grounding you and putting you into your body. It's not a distraction. I'll just say that. You might feel like you're not focusing on the problem, which is good, but you're actually energizing and engaging your mind and your body at the same time, and making you actually better able to cope.
Is someone, again, a second question about chronic complaining, if you have someone in your life that just chronically complains, is chronic complaining a form for some people of thinking that they're doing something because they're ruminating and it's going over and over, but actually it's not action? Is it comforting or soothing in some ways for some people in a sort of negative way? Do you know what I mean?
Well, sometimes it's yes, sometimes I do know what you mean. Sometimes it's learned behavior. Maybe they grew up in a household that's you chronically complain. Maybe that's part of your cultural vibe, where you complain. Okay. I grew up in a culture where complaining's very common. And the way that it was explained to me is it's kind of like poo, poo, poo. So if you complain and you don't take joy in things, So you're not, people won't be jealous. You won't get the evil eye. Okay. So, I understand it from also a cultural perspective, and why you complain. And you think about, well, what are you really afraid of? Okay. If you're complaining, what's your concern? Okay. You address it. I understand you really don't like that, or I understand you were disappointed. Tell me about that.
We have a great question. One is that, what about teens who have no clue what their goals are, and how would you help them figure this out? And also, what if you've been on autopilot for so long that you've lost track of your destination?
Oh, that's it's so common. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes, we can get on autopilot and lose track of our destination. And that's when you just have to stop and think about, what is it I want? What's the meaning and purpose of life to me, my meaning, creating meaning in your life. And Carolyn, I know you have had a number of wonderful webinars on this. Okay. And I know I did one on creating meaning. So access that. The other thing that I think is really interesting is for you to take the VIA character survey. I think there's a lot of utility in that. It's free. I don't own it. I don't make any money off of recommending it. This is a great way for adults and teens to figure out what they value in themselves as character strengths. It's not a personality test. It's telling you about what you value in yourself as your character strengths. You have 24 character strengths. It was developed by Dr. Martin Seligman and Peterson. I'm blanking on his first name. It's been around for 25 years.
Chris
50,
Peterson.
Thank you. 52 countries. That is a really nice first step in self-discovery.
Beautiful. What an amazing hour. This has gone so fast. Donna said, some of this reminded her of Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, as it relates to purpose and goals. And beautiful. Thank you. Lots of people, extremely powerful, very powerful. So whether you're a teen or whether you're somebody that is, an adult looking for ways to connect with what is strong in you versus what is wrong, and getting curious, right?
Yes. And I remember I do Positivity Teens workshops and webinars, and, teens should be encouraged to have goals, right? They shouldn't wait until they're adults to think about what their goals are in life. Teens have goals. Teens have goals for the following year or the end of the school term. So encourage your teenagers to have goals and explore them with them.
And I think it's fun to have goals that connect you with your values. I mean, I'm a health and wellness fitness professional, and I can't just give people statistics about how good it is for them to do all these things. I have to connect it to what's important to them, right? So, for example, one of my fitness goals or health goals is that I want to be able to get up and down with ease till my last breath. So that dictates that I get up and down from the floor every day, and I practice that. And it's helping me achieve that goal. And why is that? Because for me, that just feels like vitality is something that I value, and I want to be able to have that kind of mobility. So when we connect it to what are your values, what is something that you want that's a little bit more basic. Maybe it's not like I want to be the president of the United States or a senator or something like that. It can be simple things, right? I want to feel a certain way can be a goal.
Yep. Or, I want to change the way that I think about something can be a goal. So, it can be little goals, micro goals, or big goals.
Awesome. Any final thoughts, Sherry?
Thank you so much for allowing me this honor of sharing with you today. Carolyn, it's always a joy to be with you. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions or would like to know more about the webinars I do for teenagers and for adults. My email is there on the screen, and I'd love to reconnect with you. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join me today. Thanks, Caroline.
You're so welcome, and thank you. It is such a pleasure and honor to have people that are so freaking smart on this podcast and on this lunch hour. And I thank everyone for joining me. Next week will be the first Tuesday in June, and it will be our last positive psychology hour for the summer. We will resume again in September. And what I highly recommend, it's Nancy Kirshner, and she's going to be talking about boundaries and doing part 2 of her boundary workshop. So please tell all your friends. It'll be great to see you all, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
so much. Thanks,
Thank
Carolyn. Bye,
you.
everyone.
Feel free to unmute and let our speaker know.
Thank you.
Thank
Sherry.
you. Thank you so
Karen.
much.
Take care, everybody.